This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Good morning. This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I am the Voice of Respectonomics and joined by my co-host, Sarah Benton. And good morning. And it's always a bit of a stretch to say good morning because you always wonder if somebody's listening to this in the middle of the night. So
good afternoon. Good evening.
So let's be very Latin about it and call quotidian, which means at whatever time of the day.
I like it.
More Latin to follow as you wish. Or
as
Greek.
Per norm.
No. As per norm, exactly.
Lessons within the lessons.
But here we are having what I would call a little bit of a laugh, a bit of relaxation. And we're in the middle of a world of great fear. And we want to talk to this morning about fear. Fear that we experience, that we acknowledge, perhaps we don't always acknowledge, but is very present in our lives. And I want to divide the concept of fear into maybe two or three sort of subcategories, if you will. There's a fear of things that we are born with. Apparently, babies have a fear of big sounds. That's just, sort of a big bang goes off, it frightens them. There are things that we are frightened of internally, some of which is genetic. I call it DNA. And this can be, somebody who, for example, is fearful of crowds, someone who's fearful of, I don't know, I can't think of all the things people are frightened of, but these phobias that are, they need extreme therapy. We've talked about this, and I think our listeners should be very aware of the podcast we did on fear of success, because that explores a lot of the issues that go around fear and how we can handle them, basically. The fear that I really want to address this morning, though, is the fear where we, in fact, operate in our day-to-day lives. And I suppose the classic example in a day-to-day basis is the fear that you're going to say something at work that is, in fact, going to upset your career. It's going to bring on the wrath of the CEO or the wrath of the supervisor, and somehow or other you're going to be ostracized. It's not a pretty place. And that kind of fear is very existent in many corporations, frankly, in very many political circles today. You know that thing where you hear people saying, well, I don't think you should say that.
Yes.
And it's not because you're being tactless or rebellious or anything like that. It's that sense that there will be repercussions from what you've said.
Correct. It will not be well received.
It will not be well received. And unfortunately, I'll use the United States as an example. In today's world, there's a lot of people who are frightened of expressing their opinion because of the damage that can come from that. If you talk to some of the major law firms on Wall Street, you'll find that they have become very careful about how they express their opinions because they're concerned about retributions from the White House.
Yes.
So there's that kind of fear that we want to talk about. The most basic fear, though, that most people understand very easily and very quickly is you're crossing the road and a car comes at you at a speed way beyond the limit. It is terrifying. Have you ever had that experience yourself of a car coming at you?
Yeah.
Yes, we all have in one way or another. And if it wasn't a car, it was a saber-toothed tiger. But whatever it is, it immediately physiologically gets us into our fight or flight mood.
Absolutely.
Generally speaking, it's not a good idea to fight a saber-toothed tiger.
Or a car.
Or a car. Mm-hmm. I was just being a little old-fashioned, or I might even be pre-Lapthian, before the Stone Age. That's Latin, by the way.
Thing you. There always has to be some Latin in our lessons.
Oh, yes. It just seems to percolate through. But the issue, though, is I want to be very careful that the fear we're talking about is the fear that I would almost call manufactured. It's almost intentional. I mean, in all seriousness, the car that's coming along the road too fast, in his heart of heart or her heart of hearts, probably wasn't intending to do that kind of damage. I mean, if
Right.
there was, it was out of sheer negligence and whatever else. But the truth of the matter is, we're talking about fear that is intentional, that it's meant to keep you in a state of fear.
Mm.
In other words, if you look at a lot of businesses today, we don't say this very often, but it is a truth that a lot of businesses today are run on the basis of intimidation. And the intimidation is that we expect you to do your job, and if you don't, you will be out. It starts as crudely as that.
Do
That's
you think
not,
it's intentional all the time, or do you think
I
sometimes
think,
it's just as a result of the environment altogether?
no, I think that first of all, that example of if you do not perform, you will be out, that tends to be more specific of a time. It might happen in a quarterly review. It might come because the performance has been substandard. There's a number of ways in which that can happen. The fear I'm really talking about, though, is that insidious fear. The
Mm.
one when you're sitting at your desk or you're sitting on the production line or you're at Tim Hortons and you know something isn't quite right in terms of the way you're delivering your service or the way that you're being coordinated with your fellow employees, whatever it is, but you don't have that feeling that you can get up and go and talk to the supervisor, the director, the manager, whoever it might be. You don't have that feeling of freedom to go and
Mhm.
talk it out. It's very inhibiting. I use the word intimidating because the nasty part about this is my veneer shows to the customer and to my fellow workers that I'm okay, Jack. I'm having a great time. And I do not have any concerns about all of these things that are going on me. I don't pay attention to them. That is not true. The things that are going on around us are insidious. We've talked about this, the FID factor, which is
Mhm.
the FID factor is the frequency, the intensity, and the duration. It's the duration issue that is very, very undermining. That one that says over and again, no, we don't really need your opinion. You just carry on doing what we're asking you to, not asking, telling you to do.
It can be paralyzing for people.
Ah, that's the point.
Mhm.
So let's deal with this. And first of all, people need, I need, you need, whether it's in the political orbit, whether it's in the commercial business orbit, whether you're working for a foundation or a volunteer group or a faith organization, wherever you are, this issue of fear is very tribal. And it's tribal in the sense that the tribal origins are that you and I, anthropologically, we either want to lead or to be led. That's who we are, one or the other. Nothing wrong with either, in the pure sense of being led or leading. But you need to remember that that leadership that we're talking about, that tribal leadership, is actually one of servant leadership. It's where the chief, whoever you would call the head of the gang, is in fact in the business of serving you. When that arrangement is distorted, that's when we get into the arrangement that I think is far more prevalent today than we actually admit. I'm not sure
Mhm.
you can measure it. I'm not sure you can get out a barometer and say, oh, it's up or down. But I
Right.
think this nasty, nasty underlying feeling that you can't go out and say what you want to say, and that the arrangement is actually parasitical. And parasitical means that those that are in charge, those that are meant to be leading, are actually sucking on the host. They want to see what they can get out of this entity, whether it's political, whether it's commercial, whether it's business. They want to see what they can get out of it. And they cross their fingers and hope to die that the host will continue to see them through. It's
Mm.
not, you may think I'm being rather dramatic and rather strident, but I think if we got out a scalpel and truly looked at the organizational behavior today, I'll give you one example. Sam Walton at Walmart, his great question was he would have, first of all, he gathered everybody together. That in itself is quite interesting. What organizations just literally bring everybody together? They're very big at saying, oh, we're going to have a regional meeting and this kind of thing. But the idea of bringing everybody together, Whether you're the one who's, scribbling out order forms or whether you're the one who's managing huge sums of money, it doesn't matter. But bringing everybody together. How many sales meetings have you and I been to that are for the salespeople only?
Correct.
You don't get, well, we want everybody there. We want the administrators, we want the analysts, we want everybody there. You don't get that very often. That's number one point. Number two, Sam Walton, having gathered everybody together, do you remember what he called his employees? He called them associates.
Yes.
In other words, they were to be brought together. There's a Latin origin to the word associates.
Let's hear it.
Well, it goes back to the society that you are brought together as a, what is it, a sociétés, where you are brought together as a unit. So it's a very healthy feeling that you're an associate. But here was his brilliant question. He would stand up and say to the groups, we know what we're doing right because the numbers tell us that. And how often have you, Sarah, been at a sales meeting when they start telling you what they've done right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You remember that feeling? We are so proud of what we have done. Translation, I am so proud of what I am doing. So proud that, well, you're just part of the puzzle, but I'm at the top. I mean, all the message is awful. So first of all, he said, it's the numbers that tell us what we're doing right, which is very interesting. Then he asked this question, tell us what we're doing wrong. That's not the same as telling us what we don't need to do anymore. It's not the same as telling us how to improve or how to enhance. It is to do with tell us what we are doing wrong. And I have never in my corporate life ever heard that question.
No.
And it's a crucial question because what it does is it takes us to the place where you're the supervisor, the manager, whatever you want to call that individual, the officer, that individual is not frightened to hear the answer. In fact, if you think of it, you would welcome the answer.
Correct.
Your trucks aren't arriving on time. Your screens don't open until 10 in the morning. I mean, whatever these things are. But when you know that you can say to the supervisor, look, this is the thing that isn't working, and this is what you're doing wrong, that has two parts to it. It means I have the freedom to express. And beautifully, the officer, the manager, has the option to receive it.
Exactly. I was just going to say the manner in which that is posed to associates or to your organization or to the people is providing an environment or a safe environment where they've not had to go and say, let me tell you what's wrong. You've had an invitation.
Yeah.
And it would present itself that they're open and receptive to receiving that in terms of everybody improving.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
this is coming onto the real major issue. Everything we've said so far, I'm almost going to guarantee you that if the chief financial officer was listening to this podcast, and I wish he were, because he wants his organization to make more money. He wants that business, or she wants the business to be showing, increasing its return on invested capital. All of these, great economic theorems. That's what they want. And I will guarantee you that no human being operates successfully when they feel intimidated, when they're in a state of fear, when they feel suppressed, repressed, or just plain pressed. They don't perform well.
Well, you're
We don't.
removing a collaborative approach.
Exactly, but it's very insidious. It's very eats away at you. And one of the problems with this kind of fear, is there it is eating away at you. And there you and I are with smiling faces. So we're actually living a lie. We're not actually able to say, I'm hurting like hell.
We don't feel like we're in a position to.
Exactly. And if you were to say, I feel dreadful and whatever, things aren't feeling right, I'll go to the sort of the colonial English upbringing, which said, well, you ought to stand up and be a man. Now, you've never quite been told that. At least I hope you haven't.
No.
No. Okay, we're safe. But seriously, this idea of, stand up and get behind yourself and push yourself forward is absolute nonsense, because in actual fact, When we do that to people, they're already at a level of, however you calculate it, of depression, call it depression. What in fact we do is push them down further.
Right.
And that creates, again, less activity, less energy, less innovativeness, less of it, all the things you're looking for. It
Less
actually is counterintuitive, it's counterproductive.
yeah.
So with the CFO, please, or the CEO, or the chair of the board, or the prime minister, listen to this point that if people are frightened, we will not perform at the level that we can. And that is a terrible, terrible human tragedy to have us as human beings operating below potential. It's not, I mean, aside from the morality of it, it is an incredible waste of energy and time.
Absolutely.
So,
I've heard you say before discrimination by compensation.
mhm.
What do you mean by that?
Because I'm flying in an airplane, okay? Have you ever flown in an airplane?
I have. I have
Yeah,
not,
right. I thought you might. Yeah.
but I've been in one.
Yeah. And I'm not going to give you the Latin origin of the word aeroplane. I'm not, I promise. Or the Greek, I promise.
It's killing me
But
right now.
no, but what I'm going to say though, let's both agree. We'll put it into French. We have all been par avion.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Now we're safe. But seriously, I'm flying over the Alps, yes? And at the very point I'm flying over the Alps, I want you to ask me, or I ask you, who is the most important person to you at that very point? I would say the pilot.
Correct.
That's number one on my list. But number two is the service guy or lady who actually managed to get the aeroplane up in the air and made sure that all the locks were on properly, that the engines were properly.
The servicing, the
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd like to be sure the engine,
Balances.
I'd like to be sure that the doors were glued on properly. Mr. Boeing. So at that point, that person or those sort of individuals are crucially important to me. And here's your Socratic question. So those are the two people we agree are the most important in our lives. Lives. How come the chairman or the CEO of Boeing is paid a multiple of 300 or 400 times those individuals?
Well, I think this is the age-old question that spans across many an organization and many
Mm,
a different industry, right?
yeah. But it's discriminatory.
Mm.
It is discriminating. It's done financially. And it's part of this fear puzzle. It's part of the paralysis. It's part of the, what are we calling it? The parasite that's
Mhm.
sucking on the whole organization because we are not reallocating the resources where they need to be allocated. The most important person on that plane is the pilot. The second is the person who or the engineer who designed the way the doors close.
I was
Those are
going to
the
say
people.
a lot of times people will think of in terms of when you think of income
Mhm.
equates to additional power,
Ah,
right?
and there is your bingo, bango, bongo, because the essence is the power and the income are the cousins.
Correct.
And that's a dangerous place to be because the power that we're talking about is power that is coercive, often,
Mhm.
power that is repressive, power that is demanding. I've used the word too often, parasitical, but it is also a power that fails in one huge issue, and that is servanthood. If you're
Mm.
the CEO of the corporation, you've heard CEOs after CEO tell you what a splendid job they do and how they manage the businesses and they've done this, that, and the other. Actually, I would love to hear the CEO come out with a home-blown truth, which is I, the CEO, am the servant to the board.
Mm.
Because that is the relationship that needs to be in place. Once you have that symbiotic relationship, guess what happens throughout all the organization? Then we're in the ability or the capacity, I would call it almost the symbiosis. We're in a place where we actually want to serve one another. And when we serve one another, that works to serve the shareholder, it works to serve the supplier, and it works to serve the customer.
It's a
Isn't that
reciprocal
what the business is
relationship,
meant to be doing?
right?
Hmm?
It's a reciprocal
It
relationship.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that note, then, so what do you see from a respectonomics vantage point? What are the solutions?
Okay. First one is what we've said this over and again. We need people to be aware. I want the production line worker. I want the clerk. I want the administrator, and I want the senior middle management to become aware that this fear that they're operating under is extremely unhealthy and very damaging. It's inhibiting. And those are the same individuals that need to be able to, as it were, come forward to express how they think things could or should be done. I mean, that sounds a little bit sort of almost like a sort of schoolboy text. So let's go a little deeper on this point. And that is this. How often in our lives have we found that we haven't said things out of this concept of fear? You and I agree on that?
A thousand
How
percent.
often have you found somewhere down the line that your greatest regret is that you didn't say anything? Very few of us say, oh, glad I didn't say anything.
Correct.
Most of us will say, darn it, I should have said. Because what in fact that fear is expressing is that you know something's wrong.
Hmm.
You're not being difficult. You're not being rebellious. You're not being anti something or other. You know something isn't right. And when things aren't right, it's like the root of a tree. Once that root is not working rightly, eventually the tree will die.
Well, and having the courage to say it. So often it's,
Yeah,
or you get to the point or the stage where you do share or say something or contribute, and you say to yourself, "Why did I wait so long?"
exactly.
Because it's now, like you say, it's
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
alleviating pressure off of
yeah.
yourself and
Right,
maybe that have been hanging on
right.
as
So
well.
one of the things that we need to understand, though, is for me to be able to excise that fear, I
Hmm.
have to be comfortable in my own skin.
Absolutely.
So to be comfortable in your own skin and to have that sense of self-dignity and self-worth, first of all, just as a statement of humanity, actually everybody is worth it. Everybody is worthwhile. And I think everybody should look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm worth it.
Hmm.
My name is Samuel. My name is Sarah. My name is Frederick. I'm worth it. You need just to say that every morning, every afternoon, every time you look in the powder mirror or the washroom mirror, whatever it is, just be able to recognize your own value. That's important. Secondly, we've talked about this a lot, and that is that when you have these fears that are inhibiting you, they might be the fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, and so on. Recognizing those fears is important. Secondly, how do you deal with them? And I keep coming back to two central themes of how to deal with them. One of them is aerobic exercise. Aerobic
Hmm.
exercise is a wonderful way of calming and at the same time enlightening and enlivening. It's a fabulous combination. Getting the heart rate up works. And you're getting it up for the right reason, by the way,
Right.
not out of fear. The other one is the writing of the journal. A journal, I found this out very recently from an individual who's done a great deal of work, but you know him. He's done a great deal of work in the area of spiritual formation. And
Hmm.
he said something very interesting that when you write a journal, you show your mind what the heart has never actually shown you before.
Mm.
It's a very, very, and we all know it. If you write a journal, one of the things that happens, you go, wow, where did that come from? Well,
And there is scientific evidence that would back up that even just the process of writing it
yeah,
down and writing it out
yeah,
solidifies it
exactly.
and the courage
Yeah.
to.
And it releases within you more ideas, more confidence, more of everything. It's a brilliant combination. And all you do,
Hmm.
by the way, if anybody wants to know how to write a journal, here it is. What did I do today? And what did I feel about what I did today? That's it.
Hmm.
You want to get fancy, add on what triggered the activity.
And it doesn't have to be extensive
No,
either. You don't have to sit down and write
no, no,
3, 5, 6
no.
pages. It could be a few sentences.
I don't know if you can see them where you are, but can you see yeah, can you see my index cards?
I can, your
Yeah.
respectonomics index. Yeah.
Everybody should have respectonomics index cards and write on them. What did I do today? How did I feel about what I did today? That's one thing. The other thing organizationally is that we need to allow, encourage, set up, whatever the word is, we need to have small groups. You and I belong to a small group. It's called the Dignity Trust. And when we started calling it the Dignity Trust, it was almost, I mean, I don't call it tongue in cheek, but it was a sort of, well, that's a good name. In fact, it's an incredibly powerful name
It
because
is.
what we are implying to one another or giving to one another is dignity and trust. And when we do that, then we have the total freedom to express our opinions without being judged
It's
and
a
without,
absolutely it is a forum, an environment
yeah,
that you can feel comfortable
yeah,
and safe in not having the same opinion
yeah,
and sharing your opinions and
exactly.
then being respected,
Exactly. It's
right?
brilliant. The small group formula, though, is very, very powerful. And every CEO, every prime minister, every leader, every chair of the board should be encouraging and pointing out the benefits of small groups. And small groups does not, you've been through this one. We're going to have a small group of all the executives on the 45th floor. No, we're going to have a small group with maybe an executive, but I would also like to have the one who cleans the elevators at night
Right.
because each,
All variations of roles.
absolutely, and they're all incredibly important. You know, you go into Tim Hortons or go into a coffee shop. Who's the most important person? Fairly obviously, the person at the counter. That's what tells whether it's a good cup of coffee or not. I don't care how many millions you spend on, supply chains and ships and espressos and whatever else you do to get the coffee to the counter. That
Experience.
individual is absolutely crucial. So the small group of bringing everybody together is very powerful, and you and I can validate that, authenticate it any way you want. We can verify it. It is
Right.
an absolute truth. The last thing is this: the CEO, and I keep coming back to the CEO, I'm talking about management, I'm talking about supervisors, I'm talking about the presidents of a corporation or of a foundation or of a, I don't know, maybe a service club, whatever it may be. Recognize that if you're operating on the principle of intimidation, you're probably losing 30% of your productive capacity.
Hmm.
And every CEO that I've ever spoken to says, how can we get more out of what we've got? Well, you'll get a heck of a lot more out of what you've got if you, in fact, dignify people.
You're stifling opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. Because when I feel free, and I've noticed this in our own Dignity Trust, how many good ideas and how many fruitful ideas have generated themselves just because we trust each other and can talk it out and
Right.
be excited about it. How many
Right.
businesses today can truthfully say they're excited? How many people come back from work? How many people do you know who come back from work and say, boy, I had an exciting day today? I
It
haven't
doesn't happen very often.
I haven't heard that in a long, long time. But you get the small group and you get the CEO who now recognizes the appalling damage that is being done through this process of intimidation. And by the way, somebody once said to me, asked me, where does this process come from? What was the creation of it? And believe it or not, it comes from the military. The military is a top-down organization. Thou shalt do what I shall tell thee to do, and don't you dare argue with me, otherwise you will be court-martialed. End of subject. I don't want you to think. I want you to do, and you're going to listen to me. And of course, we couch that in all lovely words and lovely memos and emails and even give people little, bonuses and say, gosh, we love the way you went along with that.
Hmm.
Translation, you did what I told you to do. It's very crude and it's very ugly. So the whole business is to bring people back to understanding that we are dealing with human beings, that the human being needs to be dignified in its in their entirety. And I want to give you one last comment here. And I hope you've got one question for me. Anything you like, anything. But I have one stand up recommendation now to the CEO or the chair, the prime minister, the president. I don't care where I go with this, but I have got one statement to make. We talk about delegating responsibility. delegating duties, delegating jobs and tasks. You've heard that your HR world is full of that, yes?
Hmm.
Today, we start on a new track. We delegate dignity. I rest my case.
Excellent. And how can business people, leaders, team managers, employees, how can anybody get in touch with you, Jeremy, in terms of engaging Respectonomics into their businesses and
We,
to their group?
first of all, we need people to talk. We need people to say to one another, hey, go listen to this message. This message, I want to tell you one thing. I hope and I pray that this message carries one important message, and that is we've left Jeremy at the door. This is not Jeremy's message. This is, I am the voice of Respectonomics. And what we're bringing to people is an awareness of these issues at times that are very, very difficult. Let's not
Hmm.
be naive about that.
Right.
We need each other. And to need Respectonomics, you go to the Respectonomics website, Respectonomics, and you can leave messages there. Better still, Jeremy at respectonomics.com. That gets to me as well. Those are the,
Absolutely.
to me, the most obvious ones.
And we encourage anyone and
Hmm.
everyone from small businesses
Hmm.
where 2 to 5 employees to mid-sized companies to larger organizations.
Absolutely.
Reach out, please engage
Yeah.
with us. We're happy to have a conversation with you, help you identify what some of the concerns are, and help, allow us to help you,
Yeah.
uh,
I'll,
you
I'll,
know,
I'm going to give
make
you,
that are necessary.
I'm allowed one more sign off. One more. Please,
Okay.
pretty please. No Latin, no
Yeah.
Greek. Dignity is democratic.
Mm,
Now I
you
do
got
rest my case.
yes. Thank you, Jeremy,
Oh,
as always.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Take care. Bye.